Yo, yo. Yo. on my own.
So it's the time for the package from China time. But this is an old school system that we have seen before. This is a 12-inch mini arcade machine, but this is the latest edition, or that's what it's saying. They improved it, and that is what we're going to check out today. The way how they packed it up is absolutely great. Then we're going to get ourselves the 12-volt adapter. I noticed by using it for, let's say, an hour or so, it's getting really hot. Also, we're going to get a controller, and yep, we can play together with your friend. Then we're going to get the packaging, and the way they basically like put everything together in the box is absolutely amazing. A lot of plastic fantastic, a lot of, let's say, screen protectors, stuff like that. So I must give them extra kudos for that. Okay, so when we've moved out of the plastic, and I'm curious what are we going to get with this device. The first thing I'm noticing is there's still a screen protector on it, but it still gets some bubbles beneath it. A little bit of a bummer. So I'm noticing that when booting up, we're still going to get the NGA 9000 boot up display. But also after we're going to see the loading screen, I do notice some differences, but we're going to talk about that later. It also comes with the toilet paper manual, like always, and yep, it comes also in English language, so that's pretty damn awesome. It will explain you how the device works, but most of the time there's not a lot of information about it. You just need to figure it out yourself. Alright, so the button layout, it's a quite basic button layout, 6 buttons, but that's the thing that we're only going to need. So at the left we're going to get the joystick itself. The joystick is your typical Chinese wiggle stick, and there is not like a very good octogate beneath it. But the thing I've noticed that we can do some moves in some fighting games, so that is absolutely amazing. So the joystick is responsive, and I'm guessing this is more like these weird knockoff Sanwa clones. The button layout, let's take a close look at that. But okay, so what you're going to get is the 6 button layout with the long travel Chinese buttons, and the touch itself, it's not really bad. I must say I've played a lot with it before making this video, but it would be great to have like Sanwa clones at least. Then we're going to get ourselves the coin start and ooh, plastic. A reset button. But there are some things that we need to know. First of all, like the coin start and reset are all fun, work fine, but the first option you only have is when pressing the coin start in the MAME, you can pause the game. That's the only thing. But when you're pressing the reset button, there is no quick load or quick save menu. Nope, when you press it, it just instantly go back to the freaking main menu. So how about the case design? I personally really love the case design itself. So first of all, the angle of the display is absolutely amazing. Then we're going to get ourselves the way how this thing just looks. It's full made of plastic, so you do have a plastic fantastic feel to it. So later on we will do a teardown and some of the plastics can be removed, but I can tell you if you're going to remove it, you're going to be destroying it, because the way how they made this, yeah, it's all like clicking, and some, let's say, piece of plastic will break off in the end, because it's not like really flimsy plastic, but it's not made to basically do a teardown with it. But later on we're going to take a close look at it. So at the bottom bar we're going to get 4 like tiny rubbery feet for giving it some grip. At the back we're going to get the input for power supply, the SD card, the on and off switch, and we do have an HDMI. So the device itself does have the option for adding an additional television. Then we're having like a 12-inch emulator game station sticker at the back with the call the NJ3000. So that's basically the original name of the product. I do like this, what's it, like this very nice pattern at the back. It's not like a sticker so far I can see, but let's plow it on. So the NG9000, that's still the original name. And when you're looking at the viewing angle of the display, I was quite flabbergasted that you're going to get a pretty damn nice display. And I must say, like when you're looking at most of the cheap devices I've reviewed, first of all you're going to get these weird 16:9 aspect ratio monitors, and also we're going to get ourselves like very horrible, let's say, viewing angles. But here you can see like it looks pretty damn cool. And also I'm noticing the software, they changed it out. Yep, we've never seen it before like this. We do have a better menu. And I can't recall with the first generation of these NG9000 models, we did have like a lot of, let's say, screen tearing or other issues, but also a bad view angle and some dead pixels. We have now the support for MAME, Super Famicom, Sega, NES and GBA. And when pressing into the menu, or you just press start to get into the menu, you're going to get this basic list like the previous model. We do have like 2 screenshots basically giving you an idea what it is for a game. So they did not change out the second menu, it's still like messed up with names are too long for the box. Hey, but let's take a close look at the front. We're going to get a USB 2 times and a volume control over here, but the volume is very disappointing. So sadly, the volume control is all fine and working good, but when you're looking at the audio quality, it's pretty damn bad. The controller itself, it's okay quality. It's not the best controller I've ever seen, but it's better like the chemical ones you get with Super Console X. Okay, so when you plug it in, it just works instantly. Like it didn't have any issues whatsoever. It can navigate the menu, so that's pretty damn cool. So let's boot up a game and we'll show you that it works just fine. So we can press the select button. Here you can see like the Play 2 works. And I can still recall with the first edition I've reviewed back in the day with this machine, it had like a lot of issues. I couldn't get like the second Play to work. It was like a lot of messy when it comes to the software. So this time they managed to fix it. So that's one of those improvements. The HDMI also works very well. So basically what you can do with this is like plug in a monitor and you just have yourself like a game machine. And yeah, the downside is the display doesn't work anymore, so you need to look always at the freaking display. Okay, so basically that works just fine, including the VGA. So let's pull it out. And here you can see it goes back to the arcade machine. So that functionality works very well. Okay, so let's try a couple of main games and see how good the performance is. I'm noticing a small delay in the freaking joystick. Can be a combination of the game. Wow, that is quite annoying. Let's see where the buttons are. Alright. Man, that plays quite weird. And I think it's more like a combination of... You can just hear the click come very late with this freaking joystick. That's a major problem. I don't have the issue with the buttons itself, so it's actually like an input of the freaking joystick that is a problem. Alright, so let's try a different game. Oh, this game responds way better than the other one. I think it's also like a combination of the joystick and the game itself. But so far I can see like the games mostly run just fine when it comes to MAME or UG or whatsoever. I'm quite surprised to see how good the emulation performance is. I don't see like a lot of problems when it comes to the gameplay itself. Don't hear any weird sound effects. I already told you before, like the joystick is super responsive, absolutely amazing. Even the freaking super comes out instantly. Alright, so next up let's try a 60-bit game, and so far I can see and hear everything seems to be running just fine. The biggest downside I still find of this arcade cabinet, that is the audio. They upgraded the menu, they upgraded a lot of things of this device, but they didn't upgrade the freaking speakers on the inside. It's such a missed opportunity. Alright, so next up let's try the 16-bit Genesis, and I've already noticed the audio is completely messed up. So that's kind of why we're always going to get with these devices, and somehow there was always something they try to mess up, you know? Such a bummer, because when it comes to the speed, everything in the game runs just fine. But if you really don't mind the audio, beside that, it seems to be running just fine again. Oh, the audio sounds so weird. Yeah, that's really weird. Oh, even the ring sound is messed up. Let's see how the graphical part is. Come on. Yeah. So when it comes to the emulation, also for the 3D part, it works just fine. Okay, so next up let's play a little bit of 8-bit or Famicom. That seems to be working all fine. I don't notice a lot of screen tearing or not at all, so that's great. So here you can see like they messed up the 6-bit Genesis, but they seem to be like having the 8-bit nailed. But unfortunate for the GBA Game Mode fans, they absolutely messed it up. It even, I wouldn't say unplayable, but you can see like it's dropping in frames and the emulation is pretty damn awful. Let's lower the sound. I can't take it anymore. But I guess, you know, this is the game that basically runs the best. I have seen some games like freaking like dipping to like 20 frames per second, like absolutely unplayable. So with the original review, I didn't do a teardown. I must say that I did regret it up to today. So I'm more like, a lot of people were asking me more like, hey, can you do a teardown? And I was more like, okay, I got this new model, so let's do a teardown. But I can tell you, when I'm doing teardowns of these devices, especially when they are fully made of plastic, most of them like click together. So I'm hoping I can do a teardown and basically like keep this thing like in working condition. The only downside, I already noticed there's only 2 screws I cannot reach. And the reason why is because they are too deep inside the machine. But let's remove all of them that we can remove, for example the ones over here that holds the shells in place. So already get some movement over here with the bottom plate, so let's remove some more screws and some other parkers and just see how far we can tear down this device, so we can just take a close look at the inside. So the downside is like the bottom plate have been clicked together, and when I didn't like very gently tear down, I couldn't get everything like removed properly. Okay, so let's remove like the freaking zillion freaking sparkers at the bottom, because oh man, there are so many at the bottom. Oh, but the only downside is these. I cannot remove them because my screwdriver is not long enough and I have no of them are fitting. So like this one, it's too thick, it's too long enough, but you can see like I can't get it in. So that's a little bit of a problem. And yeah, so we cannot do a full teardown. But I can give you a quick look in the inside. Here we can see like everything, how they assembled it. And the main board is kind of interesting. It looks like a CM3 module. But again, I cannot remove it. They hold the freaking module with 2 screws and some clicking mechanisms, and I cannot really reach it. I can reach in with my hand, but I cannot even remove the cooling block. So also they glued it on it. So you can see like the monitor itself goes straight into the main board. So if you want to do modifications, you need to have a driver board or a replacement monitor. It's going to be quite expensive. Alright, over here we're going to get the buttons, and the joystick can be replaced and upgraded if you want to. Here we do have like the Samba clone, so if you replace all the buttons with some decent ones, I think it would be like a way better experience. Here we do have the speakers left and right, but you already notice it that these things are like sounding like shit, and explains because they are like very tiny. Then we're going to get the USB connection that goes straight into the mainboard over here. And the same goes for the cable 3. It's a quite interesting way how they assembled everything, but this is basically what we're going to get on the inside. But okay guys, that rounds up this video. Let me know in the comments what you think of this. Yeah, I just want to put my pros and cons in this. I personally really love the casings, like just how it looks. And yeah, the display itself is pretty damn cool. The display is in my opinion better than the first model, or having a brain fart, that's also possible. But besides that, yeah, there are some pros and cons, especially when I look in the emulation. Just a bummer that they messed up the GBA. Well, thank you for watching. Consider subscribing, hit that little bell, become on the Wicked family, and I will see you in the next video.
I recently came across a comment on YouTube from someone saying that the Odin Lite is mainly a device that performs well in retro games from PS1 and under, with bad performance in any of the demanding emulators. Even though I have made an emulation video on this processor using a phone, this comment shows me that the performance of
It wasn't me. Morning.
Morning.
How you doing?
Hey, we're doing okay.
What you got? Just a little bit of everything?
Yeah.
Does it work?
I guess so. Never point a gun at your face and pull the trigger.
What I'm doing is I'm selling this stuff because I'm going to Europe this summer.
Yeah?
My first vacation in 17 years.
Really? How much for everything?
For everything.
For me to clean you out?
For it clean you out.
What do you mean how much for everything?
If I just took it all?
I don't know. Throw out a number. Everything that's left?
Everything.
This gentleman wants to know what it would cost to take everything that we have.
You gave me an offer.
$2,000.
500.
500?
Yeah.
So how about 1,000 for everything? $1,000? Yeah. How about I give you $1,000 for everything?
Everything in here right now.
Yeah.
Cash.
Yeah.
23 and I'll do it.
Deal? Here you are.
600?
Deal. There's 2,300 right here.
Where'd you come from? What planet?
Now that I own everything, I'm just gonna go ahead and just give it all back to you guys.
Why are you doing that?
Just because.
Win the lottery?
Except for he gets to keep the Nerf guns. Deal?
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Did you win the Powerball or something?
No, I'm just buying everything at garage sales and then just giving it back. So you guys keep everything.
Wow.
Of course. So before you start loading everything up, I just wanted to say that I just wanted to buy everything and then give it all back to you guys.
Why would you do that for us?
Just because.
Oh my gosh.
Just wanted to make some people's day today, so
Do you mind if we have a word of prayer with you and thank the Lord?
sure. I just wanted to buy everything at a garage sale, and then what I'm gonna do, I'm not even gonna load any of this up. I'm just gonna give it all back to you guys.
Are you serious?
Where do you want, man?
So you get to keep it all. I don't even want any of it.
Man, something's weird. I appreciate it. Seriously. Is this for real?
Yeah.
It's real.
Amen.
Could we give you a gospel track?
Sure. I'm always down to bump some tracks. You can have it. You can have it all.
Is really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Really?
Yeah.
Come on. Thank you so much.
All right, here's 500.
Seriously?
Yeah.
You're not kidding, huh?
Nope, 500 for everything.
This guy just bought everything.
Actually, don't even worry about it because, I mean, I bought everything, but now I'm just going to give it all back.
Okay.
So you guys, I don't even want anything. I just wanted to buy it all and then give it back. So
Oh, wow, that's totally awesome.
yeah,
Really?
yeah,
So it's like a pay it forward thing or something?
yeah, it is.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
you're
That's
welcome.
awesome. Yeah, well, you have a great day.
Well, I'm giving it all back to you,
Why?
just so you can continue the garage sale. I just wanted to own it for a second.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
absolutely,
I
man.
appreciate it.
We are doing a YouTube video. He's in the car. You guys keep everything. We're just trying to buy everything at garage sales, give it back. We're just making a fun pay it forward video.
Can we wave at him?
You can. Is it okay if we use that for our video? Do you guys care? Awesome. I just bought all these guns. I wanted to give them to your son for free. Yeah, for him and his friends.
Okay.
For him and his friends. Y sus amigos.
Yeah, yeah, take them all.
Thank you.
Of course. Have fun. So okay to use for YouTube? Yeah? Okay, thanks. Well, you guys have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you.
God bless you, and you sure made our day.
Awesome. You guys have a good one. Alright guys, that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure you smash that thumbs up button. Also guys, subscribe to the channel. We are getting so close to 10 million subscribers, so just hit that little red button down below. Help me get that diamond plaque. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace. All right, man, we're at the Big Doss garage sale right now at my house. I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. We went to get a thumbnail for this video and there's absolutely nothing. And as you guys know, thumbnails are what make people click on the video. So we don't fake anything, so it's not like we can just, you know, get a really good thumbnail by faking it. So I hired a model. She's gonna be here in like 5 minutes and we're gonna shoot a thumbnail. I just wanted to be upfront, transparent with you guys so you know what's going on. Yeah, it's as simple as that. I'm just a marketing genius, really. We're trying to like recreate the moment of like, oh, you're buying everything, here's the money, you're just like pretty much like shot.
Got it.
So just let us know when, do like a
grabbing
countdown.
at it.
So you're gonna be just like, yeah, like, oh my goodness.
Do a bunch of different faces.
You're gonna be surprised.
That's money. That was good. It's so awkward to just stare at money and make faces, but.
I know.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you, thank you. See you guys next time.
Hello friends, my name is JJ. So the other day I read this amazing book called The 90s by Chuck Klosterman, who is one of my favorite authors. It is a really incredible history of just how different American culture was 25 years ago. And a big part of Chuck's thesis is that we can now clearly state that the 1990s were the critical decade marking the transition between the modern, computer-driven world that we all inhabit today and the much more technologically limited world of the 20th century. At one point, he says that having conscious memories of the 1990s might be the most important generational dividing line in American culture, since being able to remember the 1990s basically means being able to remember the very different rhythm of life that defined the previous century, and thus being able to appreciate the modern world with the appropriate mix of gratitude and wonder. Let me read you this great passage from the book's first chapter. It is hard to explain the soft differences between life in the 2020s and life in the 1990s to any person who did not experience both of these periods as an adult. Far more difficult than explaining the day-to-day difference between life in 1960 and 1990. For the most part, the dissonance between the 60s and the 90s involves how things were designed, manufactured, and packaged. A teenager in 1960 would purchase physical music on a circular polyvinyl record. The 1990 version of that teenager would purchase physical music on a circular polycarbonate disc. The cost of a record in 1960 was around $3, which accurately translated to $13.25 in 1990 dollars. That evolution is easy to comprehend, unlike the profound structural dissonance between consumer life in 1990 and consumer life in 2020. A person native to the 21st century can't really reconcile why anyone would pay $13.25 for 12 fixed songs that could only be played on specific high-end electronics serving no other function. The majority of all recorded music can now be instantly accessed anywhere for less than $10 a month. For those who experience both paradigms firsthand, the explanation for why the former did not seem idiotic is both simple and abstract. That's just how it was. For those who missed that era entirely, the difference is so maddening that it barely justifies consideration. This is not like the difference between driving a car and riding a horse. It's like the difference between building a fire and huddling in the dark, waiting for the sun to rise. Now, I was born in July of 1984, meaning that I did not become a legal adult until the summer of 2002. But in many ways, I don't think that being a teenager in the 90s was that different from being an adult in them, at least in the sense that you were old enough to be conscious of the world around you and how things in it worked, so to speak. I am already a pretty nostalgic person by nature, and as I get older, I find that I'm only spending more time reflecting on how different things have gotten since my day, which I guess is about the most stereotypical boomer thing an aging person can do, but I'm not ashamed. I think this sort of reminiscing is kind of fun and helps give you a useful perspective on the passage of time. I've made a few nostalgia-based videos in the past, and in today's, I thought I would just tell you a bit about some of my memories of what being a kid and a teenager in the 1990s was like, in contrast to how it is now. Given that some of my previous videos have focused more on the human side of the passage of time, today I thought we would focus more on the technological side. Technology is one of the big themes of this book, and reading it has pushed a lot of my own memories of this sort of stuff to the front of my mind. All right, let's go. So I basically went through my entire grade school education barely using computers. The first computer I ever remember seeing was the one that my second grade classroom had. It looked like this. The screen had only two colors, green and black, and it could only play a handful of very primitive educational games, which we were allowed to take turns doing once a week for like 15 minutes. This one was my favorite, a reading-based game called Word Munchers. You had to load up the games using one of these things, a plastic disc, and the whole process was so complicated that only the teacher could do it. Computers didn't even have mice in those days, so loading up a game meant having to type in special codes using the keyboard. Once a week, my grade school class would go down to the school's computer room, which was a special place where there were enough computers for everyone. One of my favorite and most dated memories of that place was that there was one computer in the room that had a full color screen, and all the kids would scramble like crazy to get to it when the teacher would open the door. I remember thinking that the full color screen was so beautiful and high tech, when in reality it looked like this. To a large extent, computers in those days were very much a novelty. It wasn't until my final year of high school that the teachers even started expecting us to hand in projects that had been typed and printed out with the computer, just because you couldn't take it for granted before then that every kid would have access to that sort of technology. Even by the time I graduated from high school, we were still doing weekly visits to the computer room, since computers were still considered exotic enough for teachers to have to formally teach us how to use them. By that point, we had upgraded to these things, the first generation iMacs, which had high resolution, full color screens and mice, and even an extremely slow version of this glamorous new thing known as the internet, which we will get to in a bit. Now, an interesting part of the culture in those days was this idea of a sort of person who was quote unquote good at computers. When I was in elementary school, for instance, there was this kid named Ryan in my class, and he was like the computer kid. His father was very into computers, and his family even had their own computer in their home. And this made him super knowledgeable about how computers worked, and everybody deferred to his computer knowledge, even the teachers. As time passed and it became more common for families to have a computer, Ryan's computers were always so much better than everyone else's. His computers were able to play these very sophisticated games with incredible graphics that blew everyone's minds, like this one game called Doom, where you shot these hideous monsters that bled real blood. That game was too scary for me. Now, the McCullough family was pretty indifferent to computers. Until the internet came along, it was pretty easy for a lot of people to consider personal computers kind of gimmicky and pointless, used more for entertainment than anything else. By the mid-90s, I already had multiple Nintendo systems, and I remember my father saying that that was enough computers for one house. Even though everyone sort of grasped that knowing how to work computers was going to be an important skill, a lot of people assumed it would be a much more specialized skill than it wound up being, with people like Ryan doing most of the work for us. We didn't end up getting a family computer until I was like in my final years of high school, meaning that I was still doing all of my written assignments by hand until I was like in grade 11. I can remember it seeming rather show-offy to me when kids would hand in their assignments that they had typed and printed on their home computers. It's like, ooh, la-dee-da, Mr. Technology Man. I remember having a particular resentment for this one girl in one of my classes whose family had a color laser printer. She seemed to take any available opportunity to print color pictures for her assignments, even when it didn't make any sense. Like it could just be a math assignment and she'd somehow figure out a reason to use her color printer for it. Now, one of the big things that turned little JJ off computers was typing, which just seemed like the most frustrating and complicated chore in the world to me. When I was in one of the early grades, I remember there was a few weeks in which they really tried to teach us how to type, and they brought in a bunch of these things, type-right plastic keyboards. They had this tiny little LED screen, just maybe big enough for a single word, and you would have to type those letters with your fingers all in the right place. And I found it so deeply frustrating and counterintuitive to learn that I never did. As I got older, they started to introduce us to more sophisticated typing programs that we could use on real computers in the computer room. Stuff like All the Right Type or the glamorous Mario Teaches Typing, but I struggled with these as well. The notion that I would someday be able to type entire paragraphs quickly and without looking at my fingers seemed about as far off as the idea that I would someday become a concert pianist. It still kind of shocks me at some level that I ever got over this and can now type large paragraphs with my fingers in the right place and not really think about it. I mean, now I can even type whole complicated sentences to my friends in seconds just using my thumb. But that also gets into how I finally wound up learning to type in the first place. One thing that I think Chuck Klosterman describes very accurately in his book was how often in the late 1990s you were told to care about this new thing called the internet. At a time when many people barely understood computers, the magazines and newspapers were all increasingly full of stories telling you to care about this very abstract technology called internet that was supposedly going to change everything. It's hard to imagine that there was a time in which the internet was considered something that was hard to understand, but it really was. I subscribed to Nintendo Power magazine as a kid, and I vividly remember this 2-page spread they had in their 1996 issue explaining to their child readers that there was soon going to be a Nintendo Power website. And I remember 12-year-old JJ just not understanding it at all. But it wasn't much different for adults. Really, the best modern analogy I can think of is how people react when someone is talking about blockchain today. The internet was sort of a similar thing in that some people really seemed to care a lot about it, but most people found it confusing, or were even inclined to dismiss it as some sort of geeky fad for the Ryans of the world that surely wouldn't be relevant to normal people. My personal perceptions changed when I was about 15 or so, and my sister and I used to go to her friend's house after school. That family had a computer that was hooked up to the internet, and I remember that I was allowed to use it while the girls played. That was the first time that I actually got to see what the internet was. I was able to visit the Nintendo Power website, where I could very slowly download pictures of Nintendo characters or see incredibly small, blurry screenshots of new games that would allegedly be coming out sometime soon. I also got to use chat rooms for the first time. I guess chat rooms are sort of back now in the form of Discord, but when I was a kid, the hot thing was IRC, which was much less sophisticated. You would mostly just chat with random people in rooms that had no coherent theme or purpose. It was just considered fun to talk in real time with strangers from anywhere on Earth. I really liked chatting, and when our family eventually did get our own personal computer in the late 90s, I spent a lot of time using the latest chat apps that allowed you to talk one-on-one with your real-world friends, like AOL and ICQ. If it hadn't been for those, I probably never would have learned to type, which I do think says something about the degree that competence with technology is driven more by the perceived need of the user as much as any demand from larger society. So as you have no doubt picked up by now, Lil JJ was very into Nintendo. When I was quite young, I remember going to some Costco-like store with my mother and seeing a playable display of the original Super Mario Brothers and being so hypnotized by the visuals of it. The purple Goombas, for some reason, I just remember thinking were like the coolest looking things ever. I got an original Nintendo for Christmas of that year, and new video games and systems became the standard presents I would get for every Christmas and birthday. Obviously, to this day, a lot of kids' lives continue to revolve around video games, so I can't claim that I was special in that respect. But I do think in some ways video games were more of a unique phenomenon in the 90s, just because without the internet to supplement video game culture, video games were more exciting and mysterious. If you wanted to learn anything about video games, for instance, you had to read video game magazines. Like I said, when I was young, my parents got me a subscription to Nintendo Power magazine, which gave me access to information about video games that none of my other little friends had, and sometimes made me a bit cocky. Did you know they're making a new Mario game where you play as Yoshi and Mario is a baby? Did you know that if you press down Y, down Y, you can get unlimited lives in Donkey Kong Country? Yes, I was quite the cool kid on the playground, as you might imagine. Though I was always a bit resentful of kids who just got their video game news from rumors, which was the other big source of information in the pre-internet world. This is actually something that Chuck talks a lot about in his book as well. Not about video games specifically, but rather just the difficulty of verifying the accuracy of anything about anything in the pre-internet and certainly pre-smartphone age. As he says, it was harder to prove what was true. It was harder to disprove what was false. As a society, we've elected to ignore that many people of the 90s, many modern people, many of whom are still very much alive, were exceedingly comfortable not knowing anything for certain. Today, paraphrasing the established historical record or questioning empirical data is seen as an ideological, anti-intellectual choice, but until the very late 90s, it was often the only choice available. My nostalgia for video games is also very heavily bound up in nostalgia for that other great 90s institution, the video rental store. Renting a game or a movie was always the ultimate treat for a 90s kid, and it was a treat born from the physical limitations of entertainment media in those days. While it was exciting when your parents or the parents of your friends would take you to the rental store and let you pick out any game or movie you wanted to take home, it could also be incredibly upsetting to go all the way there, only to find that the only copy of Ghoulies 2 or whatever had already been checked out. I remember often phoning multiple video stores ahead of time as a kid to see if they had the thing that I wanted before we left, because my parents wouldn't want to waste time or have me get disappointed. And I remember that this unto itself could become a very time-consuming process, because of course back in those days, the smaller video stores didn't have a computer database of what was in or out, so the store guy would often have to put the phone down and actually go physically check the drawer or whatever, which is a good segue to 90s phone culture. So when I wanted to call these rental stores as a kid, I would have to flip through the yellow pages, the big phone number directory of all of the businesses in town, sorted by industry. There was also the white pages, which had the phone numbers of every person in town, in a way that seems kind of invasive by today's standards. But it was helpful because if you ever wanted to call a friend and didn't know what their number was, you would look up the father's name, because of course when I was a kid, no one had their own phone. There would just be a single shared phone for the whole family plugged into the wall, usually the kitchen. And as you know, the original internet used the phone line as well. So not only could only one family member use the phone at a time, only one family member could use the phone or the internet at a time. Cell phones had been around since the 80s, but were extremely expensive and rare, and I actually put off getting one as long as possible. It wasn't until my final year of college, in fact, that I got one, and even then I immediately gave it up when I moved to Japan in 2009. I proceeded to live an entire year abroad without having one. I mean, it just didn't seem that necessary. If I wanted to talk to my friends or my parents back home, I would just use a payphone out front of a corner store or something. In those days, it didn't seem weird to not be in constant communication with your friends at all times. Waiting until you got home to send them a Facebook message or whatever seemed fine. Of course, even in the old days, sometimes you were important enough that people had to get you on the phone right away. When I was a kid, my dad had an important job that I still don't fully understand, but it had something to do with helping process arrest warrants. And obviously people are getting arrested at all hours of the day or night, so they had to be able to contact him. And how did they do that before cell phones, you ask? Well, by calling his pager, of course. For those who don't know, a pager was a weird little machine that you would carry around with you and would send you a message when someone was trying to call you. But of course it couldn't actually take calls, so you would just have to run to the nearest phone and call them back. A strong memory I have when I was a little kid is my dad getting a page when we were at the movies and him having to run out and call the judge or whoever on the payphone in the theater lobby. And then we'd have to go home so he could use the fax machine and send over the paperwork. Again, for any kids in the audience, a fax machine was this bizarre phone line contraption that people used to send documents to each other before email was invented. It's wild to think that the dads of today can just quietly do all of that stuff on a single handheld machine without ever leaving the theater. But get this, I actually have a legacy of 90s era phone culture permanently imprinted on my person. This is kind of a gory story, so trigger warning, but here it goes. One day, when I was a teenager, I was waiting for a very important phone call from my friend Oliver. I forget exactly what it was concerning, but it was some very important thing that I needed closure on. But much to my teenage chagrin, for some reason, my mother interrupted my waiting by the phone and forced me to leave the house to go out and do some errand with her. And the whole time I was out, I was just consumed with paranoia that I was gonna miss this important phone call from Oliver. And just as we were coming home and pulling into the driveway, I could hear the ringing of the phone coming from inside of the house. And so I bolted straight to the back door to our kitchen, which is where our phone was. Now the kitchen door was one of those doors that had a big window on the top half. And in my rush to answer the phone, I missed the doorknob and my arm went through the window. And it was very terrible, and now I have this big scar and a lasting memory of these sort of horrible atrocities that were possible back in those dark times before everyone had one of these things in their pocket at all hours of the day and night. So, those are some of my 90s memories. If you are my age, I would be curious to read some of yours in the comments. But if you don't have any conscious memories of the 90s, I would be equally curious to hear what aspects of the stuff we talked about today seem the most weird, exotic, or confusing to you. Old people like me like hearing about kids getting confused by stuff from the past. Anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next week.
This video is sponsored by Simply Safe. The Zapper.
It's the time for a package from China with a little bit of brain farting. Welcome back to the channel. It's awesome that you're tuning in. So in this video we are going to take a close look at the new Pandora's box. Yep, we're going to enter the Pandora jungle again. For the people who have no idea what this is, like the Pandora's boxes are coming in all kinds of form factors, like mini version, big version, Gemma editions, you name it, like there are a gazillion of these freaking things. And I call it the jungle because, oh boy, there are so many names now. Back in the day it was simple. We had the Pandora box and the Pandora key and that's it. But nowadays we're having like the 18S, 28S and oh, the numbers, it's a freaking nightmare. But these are like the official ones, or I think these are like the company that basically started the jungle of Pandora's boxes. And I must say, like, they putting a lot of effort in this. And I mean, like, they're going to give you like options, like game system options, like this one. There's a main board where you can plug in a controller. You can also like put it in arcade machine. You can put it in an arcade 1-up, for example. There are a lot of great things you can do with this. But it also comes with a very nice, high glossy manual with explanation how everything works, how you need to set it up. So for example, if you want to upgrade your existing Pandora's box, you can do that too. So in overall, I do like this really weird color. I don't know, the camera picks it up, but this thing, I do like it. But the weird thing is with these Pandora's boxes, it makes no freaking sense. Let me explain what I mean with that. So basically thinking like, how bad is this? It's basically like the timeline of the freaking Terminator franchise. It makes no sense if you think about it. And it's the same with these Pandora's boxes. So let's do a quick recap about these things. So what are we going to get? So first of all, we're going to get here the Pandora box number 5. And there are like even later models. I don't own them and I don't want to own them because it makes no sense. Pandora box 5, 9 on 60 in one. Then we had the Pandora's box 6. This device was quite awesome, had a lot of great new features. And yeah, the problem is with these things, like it's still freaking the same kind of mainboard with some minor revisions. Then we're going to get the CX and they're going to get the DX over there. And now we're going to get the Pandora's box EX. The nightmare never ends. But what are we actually going to get and what can we do with it? So this is just the family edition, I love to call it. You also have like the Gemma edition that you need to plug into an arcade machine, but this thing has some more possibilities. They also sell it like in game system, so we can use it with a controller. So what are we going to get with the connections over here? We're going to get 2 USB ports, but again, still only one can be used for the controllers. Setting button, the volume rocker, they're also saying about the volume control. Audio jack out, the VGA, but take consideration not all models had support for the old school VGA monitors. HDMI out and the input for the power supply. Okay, so the family edition also have this IDA connection, and what you can do basically with this is plugging into an arcade machine. I did some tutorials about how to build it inside an arcade one-up, and what I do like about these things, it's like super easy, plug and play. You don't need to do any reconfiguration. It's like easy peasy when it comes to modding this. But what are we going to get in the inside? That is quite easy. That's it, like this tiny PCB. It comes with the official Pandora's Box logo over there. But the first thing I'm noticing, like what you're looking over there, like look at this, like revision 2019. I'm like, what the hell is going on? So basically like, this is like a freaking Terminator. It came from the past. It is now from the future. And we're like, no, see, it makes no sense, you know? That is what I say, like these things are like freaking annoying. And when it comes to like Pandora's boxes, and you're looking at all the models that we have checked out here. Let's rip and tear another one. Let's see if we can open it up. That's always the question. So you can see like they're doing quite a lot of revisions to the cooling elements. Here we're going to get this blue with the DX. Then we're going to get more like a weird, very nice looking cooling element. But when you're looking at the later models or the older models, then we're going to get active cooling. And there we're going to get like with the cooling and stuff like that. There's such a weird, man. Such a weird that they like trying to cheapskate and basically like finding different ways to cooling. And this is like more like a cost-effective thing. I know for sure. Alright, so let's do a quick and wicked nerdy time, because let's take a close look at specs. So first of all, this thing is the type Pandora EX, they like to call it. CPU, the AMD Logic S905X2, GPU Mali G31. The single outputs are 1080p, and that I think is an improvement. Then we're going to get 1GB of RAM, and the storage is a 64GB SD card. So it's not really fancy, it's like basic specs, and not also like a big step up when you're looking at the previous models. But let's say you want to buy yourself a kit, what are we going to get? We're going to get the mainboard or the game console. We're going to get yourself, like, take consideration, some sell like the okay quality PlayStation 2 controllers, wireless or wired and wire, and some I felt like really horrible chemical ones. Then we're going to get the HDMI cable, and of course we're going to get ourselves a power supply 12 volt. So basically this is what you're going to get in a kit itself, and yeah, that is all we need to do with it. But there are some positive things with the new Pandora EX. Okay, so we're having like the cheap controllers. We're having the less cheap controllers, or still like the fake ones, but they are like playing slightly better. Another thing that we can do is buying this other weird PlayStation 4 knockoff controller. They will be recognized by an Xbox 360 controller, so these things are most of the time compatible with these Pandora's boxes. Not all of them, take that into consideration. And not to forget my favorite one. Oh, I'm having some troubles getting it. Oh, yep. Of course, the Xbox 360 controller, one of my favorite ones. That has a great support, and I also will use in this video for this Pandora's box. Yeah. Okay, so the first thing that it changed is the menu. In the menu, it's similar to the previous Pandora's boxes, but in my opinion, it looks more fancy now. And yeah, there is some tweaking there, so that's a positive thing. So let's take a close look at all the other functions. Okie dokie, so let's take a close look at the settings menu first. And the reason why is very simple. Let's take the system configuration and let's see if we're going to get some new options. So oh man, the quality optimization needs to be off. That's basically like this weird filter, and then we're going to get scan line. Like, I don't really like it, but there is no aspect ratio, so sadly there is nothing new over here. Game settings, here we can change out some settings for the games itself. But there is nothing much to see. We can turn up the boot sequence, stuff like that, set save and reboot, and let's take a close look at the menu itself. But also sadly, there is nothing really new here. So what you can see over here, that we're going to get this gigantic pile of a list. Press the start button, bring you into the extra options. Here we're having search, then we're going to get the platforms all in this menu over here. And we also can see like what games you have played recently, but in overall there's nothing new over here, and yeah, I must say that I'm a little bit disappointed. I do like this fade in fade out stuff going on when it comes to the menu. Again, like I told you, this thing looks kind of fancier, but there is nothing really new over there. Like same stuff like when it comes to compatibility. I know like they did mention that there were an option for adding now N64 and stuff like that. So when you're looking at this, there are some upgrades, especially when it comes to 8-bit, 16-bit. Like they want to mimic the Pandora game 3D that has all of these functions. You can even play PlayStation Portable, but with these low spec boards, don't expect miracles, because that's what you're going to get most of the time. You're going to get like all fancy options, but it will not run the games perfectly. But nevertheless, let's try some games and just show you what I mean. I just want to point out this option is existing with the CX and the DX2, but it still has the same issues when it comes to MAME games that we cannot save. So they didn't fix anything when it comes to the save functionality. Okay, so everything will be stretched to the maximum level. So the first positive thing I can say about this board, like the NES part, runs pretty damn good. Don't have weird sound issues whatsoever. Yeah, so far so good. But if you're wondering, can you play Killer Instinct? Yes and no. Yeah, you can play the Super NES or the 8-bit and 64-bit versions, but you cannot play the real arcade ones. So the game seems to be running just fine. Okay, so first let's try this. I'm just curious how it will run, because I do see that it has not the glitches that we've seen with other Pandora's boxes. The consideration N64 will always be a mixed performance with these cheap boxes, because they're not really powerful. I completely forgot how I freaking don't like this game. Okay, there you can see it, like it's giving these minor hiccups. But overall performance for a cheap board and low power device, it's not bad in my opinion. But we have reached the point that we can finally play some PlayStation 1. I did see a lot of problems with really cheap boards, especially when you're looking at the fake or the cheap Pandora's boxes. But with these devices we can play PlayStation 1 pretty damn good. It's still running on native resolution so far I can see, but the performance is quite good. Alright, so next up, PlayStation Portable, and I'm guessing they are running the PP-SSPP emulator. I don't know what kind of settings they are using, I cannot see it in the back end. If they're using frames